We go like a JWST star pattern from this. In the saloon of the Minor Diner up here at Mount Wilson, you can see the laser beams. Look at that. Like fiber optic cables.
That's great. That's like snot. You see that?
It could be like a type of algae, like a slime mold that grows in the moisture.
What is
That
that?
is
Weird. A weird spot for it to be there.
Look at that. That is
Found
very
alien
weird.
life.
Yeah, right.
Watch we all die in like 3 days.
Well, I touched it, so I'll be dead.
So like, look, this
pouring cold water down my
you
back
are
right
like
now.
Professor X, dude.
It's like Beast or Magneto.
Basically.
Genius.
Holy Carl, this is not normal theta activity for you, brother.
Please get that really good on camera for me. Okay.
Let me turn down the intensity of this.
Go say hi to the cosmics, determine if there's any alien life around, and bring back some secrets of the universe related to sound, light, and frequency. Go.
Chris Lehto. Welcome to LehtoFiles.
Okay, welcome. I'm very excited to be talking with my good friend, Carl Crusher. I met Carl in Vernal. Actually, it was my first UFO conference, and he really kind of took me under his wing. And ever since then, we've been really good friends. I talked to him behind the scenes, and we actually went to Norway just this past fall, and we're hunting UFOs in Norway. And I really look up to him for all of his knowledge on psionics, and he's gone to so many ancient petroglyph sites. So I'm really excited to have Carl on the show, really for the first time as a full interview. So welcome, Carl. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Yeah, we've been doing a lot together over the years, and it's interesting how we're still working with some of the same people and around the same things and keep crossing paths in the same research locations. So it's been really fun, Chris.
Yeah, we were just chatting before. There's so much to talk about, so much going on. I just watched your video you published this morning. I watched the whole thing. I thought it was an amazing video where you talk about a few different subjects, but one of those is MUPAS. Can you talk about your MUPAS systems?
Yeah. So yeah, when we first met, it was clear up around Skinwalker Ranch. Remember, like when we were launching the weather balloon, that whole project that had the cluster of data sensors on it, and Dr. Jim Segala, he was the physicist and engineer that came out of the Skinwalker Ranch research team and everything, working with Dr. Hal Puthoff. And he's the one that built the cluster of sensors that was on the bottom of that weather balloon and that we launched. So that's kind of the first time that we actually met up there. And then we've worked a lot together since then. But yeah, I made friends with Dr. Segala after that, stayed in contact with him, interviewed him on my show, and then we've stayed in touch ever since. And that cluster of sensors that he was building for the weather balloon has, and even before that, evolved into these portable systems that have 15 different advanced sensors all packed into one small device. So these used to be like a magnetometer used to be the size of like an office printer, like a whole standing machine with cables and cords. And to get the data, it would actually print off like a seismograph. So you had to put a whole roll of paper in the side of the machine to get the data and to run it and everything. And so, back in the 70s and 80s, these used to be big, complicated machines, but now they're so small. They're like basically a little bit bigger than a cell phone almost. And you can just plug it into the side of your kitchen countertop. But the idea is, excuse me, that the MUPAS stands for Modular Unidentified Phenomena Alert System. And Dr. Segala and Hal Puthoff and all of his colleagues have basically taken the research that they started at Stanford during the initial remote viewing program where they were experimenting with telepathy and all that. And they've compartmentalized it all down into this small little kit or small device that you can just plug in that does all the same things. So let's say if I'm having like paranormal experiences, or if I go out to an ancient petroglyph site and then I have that infamous Skinwalker hitchhiker effect, where I feel like I come home from an ancient location and now my house feels like it's haunted. I'm having all kinds of weird nightmares, all kinds of stuff like that. This device I can just plug into my countertop. It's connected to the Wi-Fi, and it can actually record all of the data to prove when there's an event. So like if I go to bed tonight and then I have a strange experience where I feel like I was abducted by aliens or something weird like that, and I wake up in the morning, that's really hard to explain or prove to anybody what something happened. Like I might have like a bloody nose or something. I might be like, man, I had a wild night last night, and try to explain it to people, and they're never going to believe me. But with the MUPAS device, this modular cluster of sensors, it captures all of that data. So while the event is happening, while you feel like you're being abducted or having a paranormal encounter, it will actually capture these spikes in gamma radiation or infrasound or microwave radiation. And you'd be surprised how often those anomalous signals will correlate with the paranormal encounters. And so all of this started at Skinwalker Ranch with the research team there and the scientific study there. It was part of the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon and the formation and the writing of that book that went back to Washington, D.C. And now we're in phase 2 of the MUPAS study, where we have it's going to be up to 500 to maybe 1,000 different participants in the study. And we're arranging for actually like 500 of these devices to get given away for free for people who feel like they're going through this stuff. So basically what Dr. Segala and I are doing is trying to prove whether or not the UFO phenomena and actual encounters with paranormal and supernatural events is measurable and recordable, and in such a way that we can take the evidence and the proof of it and start to figure out exactly what it is, what kinds of traces it leaves behind, how it affects us. And that data is being collected and actually taken back and reported to investors, and then ultimately like to the Pentagon and to officials in DC who are interested in all of this.
Well, yeah, I was really impressed to hear you had 500 of those sensors, right? And you said it does 15 different measurements. So GPS, I know, is one of them. People say that the drones go all weird on Skinwalker Ranch. And then you had gamma. What other sensors are there? You mentioned a few there.
Yeah, there's quite a few. So it'll do everything from like the humidity, the pressure, the temperature in the room, the infrasound. It has a built-in Geiger counter,
Wow.
gamma sensor, microwave EMF detector, and even gyro, like if something moves it. And it also has built-in internal GPS. So like there's all kinds of anomalies. Like if you have a missing time incident, like if I'm standing in my kitchen, I go into kind of a weird catatonic state and have a vision. And maybe earlier or the night before, I was at some ancient petroglyph site doing meditations. And so I have some weird epiphany or vision about that. I can get on the MUPAS device and log into the website and look. And the sensor in my kitchen actually records like a simultaneous big wave of microwave EMF energy plus a big spike in gamma ray energy, and these anomalous signals that I can't fabricate in my house or that I can't create on my own with my imagination. There's no tool that I have where I can go create a spike in gamma radiation in my kitchen. Like, so at the same time as I'm having this weird paranormal phenomena occur to me that feels maybe even personal to me, this sensor in my kitchen is capturing the data and proving that it's not my imagination and it's not something that I'm just thinking up and doing on my own. It's actually something is coming into my home or into my environment and affecting me. And then the end result is I have the realization or I have the epiphany as an effect of that. And the trace markers of that is these spikes in EMF or gamma radiation. And so let's say it's even if it was like a technology, even if it was like extraterrestrials and they're utilizing some kind of a directed energy weapon system or something to affect people's consciousness or perceptions of reality, there's going to be fingerprints or footprints left behind of that. There's like a wake behind the boat when it passes by, or like if a UFO or something flies over your house, there's going to be atmospheric pressure shifts, just like if a meteor came into the atmosphere. Like that's the theory. So like if they materialize into our physical reality, there should be footprints left behind, at least at an energetic level. So that's the whole idea behind the MUPAS device, is to catch that. And there's advanced systems that are big enough that you have to set them up outside with a tripod, and they have cameras built into them to actually film and everything. And then there's the ones that you just plug in your house. And then also the next model that we're going to come out with is a wearable watch. It's going to be so small you can wear it like a Fitbit. And so that's all being beta tested right now. But it's been pretty compelling. In phase 1 of the study, I think there was over 30 participants, and that the results of that were significant enough that when you see like Dr. Gary Nolan, he is going on a lot of these UFO podcasts and talking about the physical evidence and the scientific data behind UFO and paranormal encounters. And a lot of the evidence that he's going off of is the work that he's done with Dr. Segala on this MUPAS project in phase 1. So it's really interesting how close it's connected and how much these people that are inside the program, they actually need experiencers that are in the community to get the evidence and the results that they need. So it's kind of becoming a combined effort now.
So how did you fund the 500 systems? I can't imagine they're that cheap. That's a lot of systems.
Yeah, each MUPAS device is about $500 a piece to buy one. If you went just to my Patreon page and got one, it's $500, and then there's like a $20 a month membership to keep access to all the data. And so it is kind of a jump. Like people have to feel like a little bit desperate. Like I need answers, I need solutions. It's not just like some pseudoscience Ghostbuster thing off of Amazon.com. It's like really built by a physicist and engineer, and it actually works. And so we actually have provided the data and the evidence enough that we have anonymous philanthropists. I don't even know who it is, but Dr. Segala just basically contacted me and said, we've crossed a benchmark where an individual contacted him and said he wanted to donate 500 or up to 1,000 units to the study to get results. So I honestly don't know if it's like a government contract that Dr. Segala got, because I know he still has clearances, but I'm sort of on the other side of the veil. So I just hear updates like, hey, we had somebody that's donated for 500 of these to be given out for free. People just need to fill out the survey, and then we'll send them one or whatever. And we're just still setting all that up. It's not even ready to do that yet. But yeah, pretty soon we're going to be giving away 500 of them, just because somebody that got excited about the project decided to invest and donate 500 of them to phase 2 of the study to get answers.
Yeah, that's $250,000. That's a pretty substantial investment.
I haven't even asked Dr. Segala. Sometimes when stuff like that happens, I'm like, okay, I don't even want to know where the money's coming from or who it is or what's going on or why. But my friendship with Dr. Segala, I trust him. And I don't even fully trust maybe some of the people I know that he's worked for in the past and stuff. But that's what some of these black projects are like. You don't really know whether the intentions behind all of it or not at certain levels. But everything that I've done with Dr. Segala, he's just a really good guy and has been really validating for me working with him so far. So we're going to go for it.
Yeah, I met him in Bernal, and I thought the same thing. I mean, he just seemed super dedicated, and he's that type of scientist, physicist you really want looking at this. He's dedicated, and he has photos going back so far. Like, how many years has he been involved in this?
Yeah, like when you realize his connections, he kind of started as an intern with Dr. Puthoff and Eric Davis down in Texas at their private institute. But those guys, they go clear back to the origins. Like Hal Puthoff, he is the founder of the Stanford Research Institute's remote viewing program. So he was there in the beginning with Russell Targ and Uri Geller and astronaut from Apollo 14 moon landing Edgar Mitchell was also there. And
Was Werner
they
von
were,
Braun there as well? I'll show the video. You sent me a video last week, just an amazing video of all those guys doing these kind of remote viewing experiments with Uri Geller. Was I think Werner von Braun was also there? Is that correct?
yeah. So Uri Geller came out like last year and he said that he got taken in a private meeting with Warner von Braun, the head of NASA back in the day, down in some private basement room at NASA, and that Warner von Braun actually showed him material that he said was from a UFO. And Uri Geller said that like a year ago or something when all this
I remember
whistleblower
that.
stuff was coming
He
out.
also said that he showed him literally alien bodies at
Right.
some facility. They were on ice. He put on these jackets. He didn't say what facility it was or where it was at, but he said that he brought him down in the basement of some facility and
Yeah.
literally showed him alien biologics on ice or something. It was insane.
So yeah, so I got all curious and I did my thing. Like occasionally I'll be sitting up at like 2 in the morning, I can't sleep or something. I'm like, there's gotta be evidence of that somewhere, you know. So I get digging around and I found like an old version that's not published anymore of Uri Geller's website. And he had a gallery of photos, and I found this old, really red or orange colored, like bad taken photo. So I threw it into Photoshop and color corrected it all and fixed it up. And sure enough, it's a picture of Uri Geller, Hal Puthoff, Warner von Braun, and astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and they're all standing together with like official name badges. And Warner von Braun's like holding something in his hands, and they're all looking at it and smiling, like what, like it makes you wonder if that's the piece of the UFO material, and they actually took a photo of the moment, and like, but it's real. Like they were actually all together with Warner von Braun doing that. And even today, Hal Puthoff is still around. Like he's still out there and he's still deeply connected to UFO crash recovery material and these whistleblower hearings that go on. He's like always in these video clips and behind the scenes and as like a commentator. And you don't realize he's been a central figure in this UFO research going clear back into the late 1960s. He was there with Jacques Vallée and part of like Project Blue Book and everything, these compartments of Project Blue Book clear back into the 1970s. And so these guys have been old dogs in the system, legacy system, for a long time.
Yeah, I interviewed James Fox, published that interview last week, and Hal Puthoff was in the program. And he
Yeah.
says, I mean, pretty much straight out says that he's seen all of this stuff and he can't prove it because none of it's out in the public sphere. He says that's how it works, is basically you can say whatever you want, but all of the hard evidence, so the alien bodies, if you will, and the real material is just held in deep underground bunkers essentially. And so what's he going to do? All he can do is say stuff and everyone just ignores him, essentially thinks he's crazy or something. But it's amazing. It goes, yeah, it links from, Werner von Braun to Hal Puthoff, who's still around, like you mentioned, through Edgar Mitchell, right, the astronaut who started Noetic Sciences. And so Institute of Noetic Sciences, I was watching an interview or listened to a podcast that Dean Radin did a few years ago. And Dean Radin, who's their scientist, he was on the telepathy tapes. I didn't know he started out interested in this subject, and he was recruited essentially by government entities again, who took it very serious. All of these psionic kind of programs or telepathy, they took it very serious. And he said he was very surprised that the civilian world really there was nothing about it, but in the classified realm there was all this interest. But he didn't want to do classified work. So he said, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go classified. I want to be able to share this stuff. So he went totally public. And so he ends up working at Edgar Mitchell's Institute of Noetic Sciences. He's basically the lead scientist. And he's been doing that for 40 years. And he's pretty much proven, as far as I can tell, proven that there is some sort of telepathy or some sort of links out there. And very interesting, goes back to Edgar Mitchell, linking to Hal Puthoff, and then linking to Jim Segala, this project that you're working on. So I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, it blows my mind. In Apollo 14, when Edgar Mitchell went to the moon and back, he secretly did remote viewing experiments for Hal Puthoff back at Stanford.
Wow.
So while he was on the moon, they were doing Zener card tests to see if Edgar Mitchell could like telepathically guess the order of like 7 different shapes and colors, like star, square, triangle, or whatever. So they shuffled this whole deck of cards back in California at Stanford. They flip the cards over. Meanwhile, Edgar Mitchell's on the moon and he guesses with statistically significant accuracy. He guesses the Zener cards from the moon using remote viewing or telepathy. And so whether they, even though they were doing just university research and studying experiments with Uri Geller and Ingo Swann and these different remote viewers and stuff, they did these far out experiments too, that suddenly the government, NASA, the CIA, everybody was like, hang on, there's something to this. Cause like they would do these little experiments that would suddenly move the needle, or they would realize there was something real to this, the action at a distance, this kind of like consciousness, quantum entanglement effect they were trying to figure out, And so yeah, it started this whole embedded thing, but we're led to believe, just as public citizens, that like the remote viewing program is just this little club of spooks at Stanford that was doing this goofy program, and then the funding got cut because it wasn't successful. And that's what we're told. But the reality is the truth comes out later. We find out, okay, well, Hal Puthoff now, he is still working with the metamaterial research and studies. Now he's at To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge, working with him. And you've got all of these guys are compartmentalized out into different private agencies and doing their own different aspects of the research. And they're still doing it. But when they go back into these legacy programs and systems, it's all there. Like now the new whistleblowers with Delta Force operators and Green Beret guys are coming out saying, yeah, I've been on UFO crash recovery teams, and we have psionic assets that are literally like soldiers that are trained telepaths or psychic spies or remote viewers that are supposed to telepathically interface with these UFO and like actually pilot them down and land them on the ground so the crash recovery teams can go and take them and go and bring them back for research. So you look back into these legacy programs and the stuff that Hal Puthoff was doing clear back in the 1970s, and you say, oh, so this whole time that we were told that it didn't work, what was really going on was like all of that. It was taken into Delta Force and Green Beret teams, and they started capturing UAP using psychic assets, telepathy, and technology all combined together, which is mind-blowing because when you think about it, like we met Jim Segala like 6 years ago up there or something in Vernal around Skinwalker Ranch. And then you look back and we were over there in Nevada, and you and I with Brent Stone and Chris Bartell and all of us, we sat in a cave and did remote viewing experiments and measured our brain waves like five years ago or something. And everybody thought we were just crazy. Like we're just doing this kooky
They still think we're crazy.
Stuff. They still think we're crazy. Yeah. Even on Twitter, when I posted that Edgar Mitchell did a remote viewing experiment from the moon for Stanford, everybody said it was bullshit. They were all saying I was a liar and it wasn't true. And so I dug into it, found all the proof, found the photos, and there it is. It's all real. And now you've got Green Beret and Delta Force special forces operators coming out saying, oh yeah, we use it to catch UFOs as part of the system, as one of our assets, and it's a real thing, including the element that they focus on Native American and indigenous ancestry and people that are even more connected through their genetics. And so it's like, no wonder we intuitively have been going out to ancient petroglyph sites and studying this like historically and how long all of this has been going on.
I remember when we were in Vernal, there was I don't remember her name. You might remember, but she was Native American, and she basically mentioned all of this that there is this psionic relationship in the Native American culture and how they integrate really with other realms of consciousness, etc. Can you explain based on all your experience hiking out, looking at these petroglyphs, how that relates, how Indian culture relates, I guess, to this?
Yeah, I think it really fundamentally has to do with the nature of reality and how it actually works. We use the scientific method, and we try to analyze our reality and all of its elements through the scientific method now. But even before that, reality still existed before we even understood science. And so we still have to live in it and exist in it. And that includes ancient people and people who have always lived, and indigenous people. And when you look at these legacy programs, like we talked about Hal Puthoff and those guys, well, Hal Puthoff, he was actually trained and mentored by an individual named Andrea Puharich. And Andrea Puharich, he was in the Montauk Project and part of the Philadelphia experiment also. And in the Montauk Project, they figured out all this frequency and radar technology and how it affects humans and human consciousness in reality. And there are certain scientists that came out of that program that worked with Andrea Puharich that even have YouTube channels and talk about this stuff. One of those scientists, his name is Dan Winter, and he explains it like this, and I completely agree with him. He says that basically the earth in reality is made of frequencies and vibration that are all overlapping and intersecting. Like you have a waveform going this way and waveforms going this way, and then they collide, and you have either catastrophic collisions or whatever that occur where they don't conform, or they have what they call centripetal cohesion, to where the waveforms will become unified, or they almost like get in sync with each other in different ways. And when that synchronization happens, it forms these certain harmonies or resonance, and then actual physical matter forms, and all kinds of different unique things occur, like almost like alchemy or magic in some way. But basically, our reality is made up of combinations of longitudinal waveforms that are going horizontally, and then transverse waveforms that are going vertical. So you have like the earth is like a ball of longitudinal electromagnetic field, and we're on top of it, or living inside like an ocean of electromagnetic field that's going horizontally along the planet. But going out to space, connected to all the stars and the planets and everything through gravity and physics and all that, is the transverse magnetic waves that go out. But where these places cross on the earth might be on a mountain, or in an ancient canyon, or in a specific valley, or an old lake bed. And you might have the longitudinal waveform of the electromagnetic field and the transverse waveform going out into space. And right at that spot where they cross is a node or an X point, where that energy is potent, where you have the transverse and the longitudinal waves all coming together. And then let's imagine you're an ancient Native American tribe, like the Anasazi or the Northern Paiute, and you are basically looking for food, for water. You're following your intuition and your inspiration, and like a homing pigeon following the magnetic lines of the earth or whatever, this feeling, this spiritual feeling, guides you up into this canyon. Maybe you're an intuitive person, or genetically somehow your own DNA resonates with this electromagnetic field like an antenna. And so you feel drawn or attracted to go to this canyon. And when you get there, you tap into that node of the electromagnetic field. Suddenly you're immersed in it. You walk into that canyon and you sleep overnight. And suddenly your consciousness goes from being inside your skull and inside your head to jumping to that greater array of the longitudinal array and the transverse of that node in that canyon. And they would call that like an ancient sacred site. So they might bring the whole village up there to do rituals because the shaman is having visions in this canyon. He's seeing spirits of his ancestors. He's talking to the gods or entities from the stars or whatever. And suddenly he's tapped in like a Bluetooth or like Wi-Fi with his consciousness to this higher dimension through that node. So the whole village moves up there and they start doing rituals, and the different behaviors, the way that they dance or sing or sit together and hold hands, all acts like a receiver or an antenna that conducts that node, or maybe even putting feathered headdresses on your head, and the feathers from the birds like channels that microwave or gamma wave energy into the brain and amplifies those experiences. So now you have Native American chiefs and shaman all wearing feathered headdresses. And so all of this stuff, I think, fits into the science that they also figured out at Montauk. Is like, how do you take an ancient geological site that's a sacred node that has this potent energy, you can go tap into these other frequencies and other dimensions to get signals. And then if that's real, how do we measure what that signal is, measure what the frequency is, and then build a device or a box or a room like a Faraday cage or whatever, and then artificially control those signals to use it like a weapon or to create psychic spies or to amplify it. So instead of being like a Native American shaman doing rituals in the canyon, now you've got a laboratory in Montauk with Faraday cages and laser beams and radio and radar frequencies and isolation tanks, and they're trying to figure it all out, even taking drugs and different things. And you've got this whole experimental thing. So it's all connected. And for me personally, rather than going to the technology side and trying to stick my head in a bunch of machines to get the results, I prefer personally just to go up and sit by a waterfall or to go sit by the canyon. So for the last like 10 years, that's what I've been doing, is I go sit by these ancient petroglyphs. I find the shaman seat where he used to sit for 3,000 years. And then I sit there overnight and I meditate, and I try to do it the authentic and the natural way, like we did in the cave in Nevada. You know, just go actually sit there where they used to sit, the ancient indigenous people, and try to connect with that energy of the node of the electromagnetic field. And you might have crazy spiritual experiences or see UFOs and all kinds of stuff, but really it's like you're just stepping into a thin spot in reality that's connected to the whole universe and the whole frequency. It's like a hub or a meeting room or a Grand Central Station or something like that for the non-physical. So it's really fascinating.
You mentioned so stone circles. You mentioned waterfall. You know, where are these sites that you've seen? You know, do ley lines seem like they're legitimate? What do you think is the best place to find these sites from your experience?
Yeah, it really is the ley lines, but this is like an invisible reality that's difficult to measure. You can't see it and you can't tell, but it's one of those things that, like, I believe that ancient people could feel and that they knew. Like, human beings a long time ago, they were less in their head. They weren't waking up every morning and just having a whole bunch of conversations inside their mind and checking their cell phones. They would wake up in the morning to the sunrise, and they lived as a part of nature, like almost like herd animals. You know, they would move, follow the migration of the animals, just like the animals were doing. And so you have to wonder if human beings, you know, 3,000 years ago or longer, were just more intuitively connected to these energy lines and ley lines. And so your first key or clue is to look for those ancient sites, like ancient petroglyph sites that are full of like mystical carvings of strange beings and like portals and spirals and magical symbols and things like that. But then they were also, you imagine they're trying to access these dimensions. So ancient people, they're trying to understand what's going on when they visit these places. So you might find them carving like false doorways into the wall, or they'll find a spot in the canyon that echoes a lot or looks like an actual doorway, and then that will become a sacred site. Or they'll start to stand up stones like Stonehenge, or they'll put them in a row. Also, I think like the Nazca lines, the pyramids of Egypt, and a lot of that originally, when you think of when they were built and how they were built and how they were aligned with the stars and perfect precision with the equinox of the calendar, when the sun comes up on specific days and times, and all that was so precise that it's like these ancient cultures that understood at a certain level what was going on. It's almost like they were trying to build their civilizations around the concept of staying in touch with it or staying in contact and harnessing that energy. But now we just go to these pyramid sites down in Guatemala or over in Egypt or whatever, and you get this feeling and you feel like it's special, but we have lost a complete understanding of like how that ancient sort of technology actually worked. Now we just, you would say, like at the Montauk project, they would just use like a shipping container and artificial technology to fake the same thing. But in ancient Egypt, they were building entire cities and civilizations around trying to harness this concept.
It seemed like the limestone was critical. The Great Pyramid, I went there just a few months ago, and I was just impressed by every stone, every giant block of stone in the Great Pyramid was made of limestone, which is microlized fossils, essentially. And the Valley of the Kings, where they originally, the old temples, is, if you look at it, it's a giant mountain, effectively made out of the same stuff, which is limestone. Have you seen any sort of structures like that out in the US West that you visited?
They're a lot more primitive. The United States has a lot of ancient artifacts that just kind of get overlooked. There's pyramids and petroglyphs and ancient indigenous sites that are here in the United States that are older than the pyramids of Egypt. Like Pyramid Lake, just in like Winnemucca, Nevada over there, there's petroglyph carvings and artifacts around there that they have dated older than the building of the Sphinx and the pyramids of Egypt. They don't know like how long it goes back, but the mound builders and the ancient cultures, when you go to like the Adena and the Hopewell people, they were building like big primitive mounds and weird structures like the serpent lines in Ohio and things like that. And when you look into it in the archaeology and the studies, they basically run into these dead ends where they don't know the same thing. How come these are all in a line with the summer and winter equinox, and why are they in line with certain constellations in the sky? Because back then, like 3,000 years ago, these indigenous people weren't even supposed to understand astronomy and how some of these astronomical signs and timing work. But here you have these entire canyons of ancient petroglyphs that are carved to precision. So like where we went at this place called the Anasazi Trail, I've nicknamed it the Magic Mesa, but because it has like a bunch of crazy paranormal stuff that happens there. But on this trail, that whole canyon is full of petroglyphs. And when you go there, like on the exact summer solstice in the morning, unless you're there on that morning during the sunrise of the summer solstice, you're going to look at those petroglyphs and they just look bizarre, like a bunch of weird symbols that are random all over the place. But when you go on the summer solstice, right when the sun comes up, the sun shines through these little cracks in the rock in just a precise way that it points the light down on the petroglyphs like a laser pointer, and it goes from character to character and symbol to symbol, and the light changes shapes, and you realize these ancient people were sophisticated. Like they carved this entire thing around this solar event for a reason. And here I am now, like 2,000 years later, and I'm standing here and it still lines up. And I'm still able to comprehend what the story they're trying to tell and what happened. And it literally tells the story of this guy who's a normal villager who basically this light comes down, this powerful magical entity or being appears and then takes him up in the light and changes him so that he becomes the shaman connected to these star people or the higher people. And it tells this whole story. But it's like you realize that they had to spend years of their life figuring this out, and the whole village understood and was behind this, and they lived there. And there's the pottery and the petroglyphs and the dwelling site of where they all were there. We go up there now and we're just like, look at all these weird carvings, and we have no idea what it means. But when you spend like 5-6 years going there and experiencing it, and you go there on the solstice, then suddenly you go, oh, this entire village of people were connected to something so much deeper than we understand. They were connected through consciousness, through the earth itself, through these ley lines and through the electromagnetic field of the earth, to basically the information of the source of the universe. Like, they're more connected to truth and reality than we are. Like, maybe we're the blind people now. And so technically they call, going up to ancient stones or stone circles like Stonehenge and connecting with them and having that amplify your consciousness, they call that geomancy. So
what is it? Geomancing?
Geomancy.
Oh,
Yeah,
geomancy.
that's the technical,
okay.
that's the
Instead of
mystical name.
necromancy, it's geomancy. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
so necromancy would be like you're using a dead body to try and communicate with spirits.
Okay.
Geomancy is you're using the stones or the earth itself. Like, you're trying to go up and connect to an obelisk. And when you sit by that obelisk, the vibration that it connects like an antenna to that electromagnetic field resonates into you, and then you pick up the signal. So it's kind of like sympathetic resonance. Like if you take a tuning fork and you ring it, and then you hold a tuning fork close to it that's of the same harmony, it will start to vibrate, and sympathetically it will pick up the vibration. And the idea is that when you go sit by these stone circles or spirals or spires, or go sit on the rock yourself, that's kind of what you're doing. You're tapping into that resonance of that exact spot. And then your consciousness, as you meditate, gets that cohesion. So it's like two seashells spiraling together. The electromagnetic field inside your brain resonates with the stones and the canyon, and suddenly you have the same vision that the shaman did 3,000 years ago. You have the same epiphany. You see the same vision of the stars, or talk to your ancestors, or see ghosts, or suddenly you get a glimpse and you understand what's going on.
That's really interesting, because when I went through Egypt, I didn't know that much about ancient Egyptian culture. I heard of the pyramids, obviously, so I wanted to go on this UAP trip. It was phenomenal, and I was just blown away by how many sites they were. And it was these giant structures made out of granite. Like a giant obelisk. They loved obelisks. At every one of their temples, they had these giant obelisks made out of just single pieces of granite. And if you look at granite, actually, it's an extremely hard stone, but it has, at least rose granite, has quartz in it. So quartz is the same material that we use to make our digital watches run, right? It's piezoelectricity. So these crystals that we still don't understand exactly, how it resonates at perfect time to keep our watches all extremely accurate. But these giant granite obelisks had all this quartz in it. So it just made me think there of this resonance. And when I looked at the museum in Cairo, they had these long papyrus strands, that would tell this story, and you couldn't really tell what was going on. There's people on ships, which they think maybe could be some sort of consciousness spaceship or something. This really long papyrus, I remember, but it started at an obelisk. And the obelisk started the left side of the papyrus, right at the very beginning. And then from the obelisk was like this energy lines or something drawn down to the pharaoh or some sort of human or godlike entity. Really, like you mentioned there, I just thought of this kind of resonance of these buildings. And then the pyramids are out just in these random spots. I guess maybe back in ancient times, maybe there was more built up around it. But basically we drive in a bus leaving Cairo, for, 30, 45 minutes up to an hour out in the middle of the desert, and there's this pyramid. It makes me think, how did they choose this specific site? Why is the pyramid exactly here? Did they somehow navigate to that, or using some sort of, homing pigeon type technology or something? Is very interesting. And then the final thing I'll say about Egypt that I was blown away by is the astrology. So they obviously had some, like you mentioned, a huge connection, a really strong connection with the stars and how they moved, and all the different signs. So the astrological signs, I didn't know it was just a huge part of ancient Egyptian culture. I thought it was from somewhere else, and I thought astrology is just like a joke. Like, oh, everyone reads it. You can't help but hear it when it's someone says your horoscope. But going there, I realized no, they have it all in the walls. They write it into all their major temples, where they have these giant buildings out in these random spots. So I think it's really, really interesting. Jake Barber mentioned as well that in his, I can't remember which interview it was. He's done quite a few, just released so many. But he also said exactly what you mentioned there, is that he said everyone has this ability, but we've lost it. Or today's life, or the modern man has really, or woman has basically lost the ability to do this, and we have so much going on. Do you think anyone or everyone out there, someone listening, maybe the skeptics who think this is not possible, or those people that think it is possible but they couldn't do it, what's your take? Do you think everyone can do this? How can they start?
Yeah, I do. I think that pretty much everybody inherently has different levels of connection to it. And honestly, I think we take for granted what's going on all day. Just for a second, to get back to kind of what you were saying, you talked about Egypt for a minute. It made me think, like, you were talking about just like the geology and the different types of rocks and crystals. So I wanted to mention that real quick. But like, when you think about even a ultrasound, like when your wife is pregnant and you go in for the ultrasound, that wand that they rub across the mom's stomach to see the baby, and you can actually see through the mother, like x-ray vision, and see the baby inside in layers. And inside that wand is literally just a vibrating piece of quartz and sensors that pick up that vibration and interpret it into the image. And so you think about, like, that's basically like a magic wand that we just take for granted. That, yeah, you rub this magic wand on the pregnant mother and you can see through the mom all the way and see this hidden dimension of reality that's invisible to us. We just see the pregnant mother, but with this little crystal, suddenly we are able to perceive through like x-ray vision into this other dimension and see the baby and see if it's healthy, like, and it expands our field of view. And in the same way, if you think of like the ancient pyramids and these obelisks, if you zoom out to a cosmic perspective, or like from overhead, you look at Cairo and you look at the pyramids, and it's almost like ancient people trying to build circuit boards or antenna, or like use the geology before they understood like silicone computer chips, and they're using the same materials at a macro scale, and they're building cities. And now all of that same kind of schematics that they're trying to tap into is so small. It's like we carry it around in our pocket in our phone all day. But to them, they were like living in the circuit board as their city and their temple, and like walking between the obelisks. And they're just basically like big earth antennas, like capacitors and resonators and channels to flow this invisible energy. And so they like were trying to turn their city and civilization into a conductor, or into a resonator of this type of frequency, to see, just like the ultrasound machine, to see and perceive or receive signals and information from the heavens or from their gods or whatever. That's the way that they saw it. Allegedly, there are entities that are living in these dimensions. It's not just invisible energy. There's other things there, like an ocean of other things. But yeah, I do believe that basically anybody and everybody can do it. But for some reason, there's a strange combination to where some people, I think, are wired a certain way. And I don't know if it's because growing up under certain circumstances, there's trauma that triggers it, or there's childhood events or a formula or whatever. But there does seem to be certain people that have like a higher sensitivity or a little bit more natural at it. Like when I was a kid, I was very very full of like imagination all the time. And I honestly think like a lot of the stuff that we just take for granted every day is a part of a glimpse into this. Like even when you're sitting and trying to solve a problem, most people visualize things. They start to visualize the problem. They try to rotate it in their mind. They are going through different options. And we just call this daydreaming or imagining or visualizing or just whatever. But if you actually look at the science of remote viewing and telepathy and all that, those are subtle versions of the same thing. This idea of just like when you're trying to think, where did I leave my car keys? I can't find my car keys. And you're looking all over and you're trying to remember and you're going through, you're accessing the files of your mind. You're basically remote viewing and trying to telepathically see where your car keys are. And you just take that for granted and you haven't practiced a methodology or refined it down to where you can actually find your keys or actually see where they are. So we just sit there and struggle with these feelings, struggle with our thoughts and imaginations. And every night when we go to bed, we have these total out of body supernatural experiences where we have entire rooms in our house that are dedicated and built to going in and like basically going into a coma. And we lay down on these beds and go on and put our pajamas on, and our body goes literally like into a stasis. And our consciousness travels into these bizarre dimensions and has visions where we see people and talk to people, go into completely alternate realms. And we just wake up in the morning and go, that was a weird dream. And we just go to work and we don't think about it, you know. But when you actually delve into lucid dreaming and psychic studies and telepathy, and you go into your dream like an explorer of consciousness, and you're actually try to become aware within the dream and travel through the dream and go other places when you're in the dream, suddenly you realize there's actually something here. And I can come back in the morning with real information or with knowing things that I shouldn't know, you know. And there's something strange to this that I think that we live with day to day. And even while we're just sitting here talking in this interview, we're talking about Egypt, and you're having the memories and you're visualizing Egypt. You can remember standing there and what it looked like. And in your mind, images of it are coming back and you're like conjuring them up and remembering. And you forget that you're here on the interview, and it's like you're in that dream and you're back in Egypt in almost a hologram, imagining it. And that is so close to what remote viewing is. It's not that much different other than the training. If you actually follow the protocol and refine that down into a system, you realize that's what these green berets are doing to communicate with the UFOs. It's the same thing as when you're sitting there remembering what Egypt was like. But there's just a refined protocol to tuning all that in and realizing that like our human body and our brain and our consciousness is like a radio that's turned on 24/7. Even when you go to sleep, the on switch is on. And so you're receiving and sending signals, and we just go through our life and we're paying our bills and doing our chores day to day. And we don't go into those subtle layers of ourself and our human consciousness to explore it, like an astronaut, like what's really going on. And when I'm imagining these things, is a part of me actually quantum entangling with that place and that memory and actually going there and then coming back? What's really going on? And when you start to explore that, especially when you have the technology like the MUPAS sensor, you can start to actually get evidence and realize, man, when I imagine that I'm in the kitchen and I'm affecting the sensor, I can actually log onto the website and see if I actually did or not, even when I'm not there. Like we have the ability to test all this now. And I think it's really fascinating. So a long answer to your question, I think everybody can do it but we just go through our lives day to day and we call it daydreaming or imagination or dreams, and we just slough it off like it's some fictional aspect of our subconscious that isn't real or isn't really connected to anything, but it is the function of consciousness and quantum entanglement. Every time you start to imagine things and visualize things, there's a part of you that goes there. And I believe that. I think that there's a part of you that actually goes there, and space and time and distance and past and future, none of that matters. There's an element of you that actually goes to that place and connects with it. And I think that's the underlying mystery to all of this.
Have you had any experiences like they're referencing, like Jake Barber said with Skywatcher, where they connected with this craft? Have you felt that in your experiences?
Yeah, we've done a couple of it together, actually. When we were in Nevada and we did the kind of the meditation experiments in the cave, that was a good example of
Yeah,
how
that was
that felt.
amazing. Why don't we talk about that? That was really kind of the first really kind of out there experience I've been involved in. And we had EEGs on you and Chris Bartell. And I remember I'm looking at the computer and I'm seeing all this, activity. And again, I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't know what's going on, but there's obviously something going on in your brain according to this EEG, and I don't know, did you ever get a neuroscientist to look at that video and give any inputs?
No, I mean Brent Stone, he's the one that did that. He brought the EEG and set it all up and everything. So I kind of had to take his word for it a little bit, but he has multiple PhDs and he was the one kind of interpreting all of that stuff. But
Yeah. So I'm watching
yeah.
this. I'm watching you. You're meditating, and I can see and I can see your face, and you're like smiling, and you look kind of surprised, and so obviously something was going on. Can you describe, what that experience was like? What happened actually in the cave?
Yeah, so this was back when you were like still super skeptical about
Yeah.
all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like you were way like, no way. So I was already way down the rabbit hole. I'm like, I was there with you, Chris Bartell, and Brent. And so I mean, I was like the guinea pig sort of, but it was way cool. Yeah. So we go up to the idea is we go to the cave where we know ancient indigenous people used to sit. Like we know that just based on the artifacts, the history of the location. We're like, we know this is probably a special spot. Like, and so the idea is we go there and do the same thing. We replicate the ancient experience, sit in the cave, and then Brent Stone puts the EEG headset on to measure my brain waves. And then basically what I did was like a level 23 or level 26 gateway protocol meditation, which is just like this mental visualization that you go through where I imagine that I'm in like a different place and there's all these different tools there. I go through a certain process to get myself ready. And then I go into like a waiting room or a visitor's room. That's like the lobby of a hotel, but it's this imaginary space where my consciousness can go and any other consciousness that's there that can connect comes into the same space and we can talk or we can have a meeting. And there's like a whole system to getting to that point. But basically, I just sit down in the cave, put the EEG on, and I start doing the meditation, trying to connect with it. And immediately it's like I'm going into the visualization. I can hear all of you guys talking. And then it's like in my imagination, clearly it's like I'm imagining or visualizing, and I don't know if I'm just making it up or if it's real or not, but I could swear there's like someone standing at the opening of the cave and he's looking right at me. So I just have this intuition or this feeling like there's somebody there standing at the opening of the cave. It's like I can even see him. And you would say that it's just like I'm imagining all this in my mind, but that's why we have the EEG hooked up to my head to measure my brainwaves. So basically, it's like me and this other individual who's like a Native American person. Initially, it was someone from some ancient time that showed up that I've met before in other places. Like this other guy shows up first, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" you know but it was like there's like a weird message that was communicated. And the next thing I know, it's like I'm sitting in front across, like we're sitting with our legs crossed, and he's sitting right in front of me. It's like I'm in a vision, and I'm in this dark room, like we're in the cave, and it's at night, and there's another guy sitting there across from me, and he puts his hand out, and it's like he gives me a gift, like he offers me a gift. And this is all telepathic. Okay, so this is all like I'm having a dream, but I'm sitting with you guys in the cave. So it's like I'm start having this dream, and it's like he gives me a gift. So I imagine that I give him a gift, and we like exchange gifts. It's just like some symbol, metaphor or something. And then he leans forward, and it's like we put our foreheads together, and then I just have this epiphany, or like an understanding about that place. Like there's stuff underground, there's some cave system, and that he's found things underground there. And it's like I see a little bit of his memory or something like that. This other guy who used to sit in the cave or something. I don't know. But the whole time Brent has the EEG hooked up to my head, he can see the parts of my brain that are active, and he can confirm and say whether that's the part of my brain that is responsible for imagination, or if it's actually triggering my occipital lobe and different centers of the brain. So he's sitting there while I'm allegedly imagining meeting this ancient indigenous spirit in a cave and talking to him through telepathy, who's not even there. Nobody can see him, but it's like I'm having this communication event. And meanwhile, Brent can tell that the parts of my brain that are firing are completely convinced that I'm there. My brain is 100% convinced that I'm seeing something, even though my eyes are closed, and I'm talking to someone, even though my mouth isn't moving. So my brain is 100% convinced and acting as if I'm really in a cave talking to an ancient Native American spirit, even though you guys all see me just sitting there with my legs crossed, just smiling, doing nothing. So that's where you have to say what's really going on and what's not.
Yeah.
So where it gets interesting is if in that vision, I'm told where something is hidden, or where the cave entrance is, or where an artifact is buried, and then we go follow up on that, and it's actually there, and we find it, then that would be basically how a psionic asset would work. Like you would have that vision, you would have that meditation, you would see it clearly, like it was there, even though it's invisible. But then when you go to the location, there it is, and you actually find it, and you realize, wow, somehow I connected to this signal and received the location or the information about where to go. And so that's kind of the weird mystery that I've been chasing and exploring within myself and through meditation and in these ancient sites. And every time I go and explore this, I realize most of these places that I go and look around, the government's already been there, you know, and they've spent millions of dollars looking for the same thing. Like they know the truth too. Like they know that this is real.
Yeah, my favorite part of that story as well is you asked him, right? Did you ask him, what are you doing? And he noticed actually what you're wearing, that you're wearing the EEG on your head. Can you explain that part? That's my favorite part.
Yeah, it was like he noticed what I was doing. I was trying to find out like his mysteries, and it was like we had this funny moment where we were both doing the same thing. Like I realized he was like some ancient person in the cave, like remote viewing the future, and I'm in the cave in the future, remote viewing the past. And so somehow we meet in the meeting room. And so I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like asking me the same, what are you doing here? Kind of like the same thing, like, who are you? So he's like weirded out by the way I'm dressed, that I have this thing on my head. And I'm even explaining to this ghost how we're here basically to prove that this is real, that like that I can communicate to him even though he's 3,000 years ago or whatever. And we have like this moment where I'm asking him, what's so important about this cave? Like, is this some spiritual cave or whatever? And his answer is like, it's just halfway. Like it's halfway up the mountain and halfway down. Like when you're hiking up after hunting or getting water to go up the mountain, it's too far. It's like, it's just a cave for halfway. So it's like, oh, okay. Like it's not even that big of a deal. It's just like a resting spot, halfway up the hill. Like it's nothing super significant, but still, I mean, is that true? Is that not? Am I really just imagining all that? I don't know. But somehow the EEG results show that I'm not imagining it. I'm convinced that I'm seeing him and I'm talking to him. And then as the research goes on, you bring in more specialists and more scientists, and you bring in ground penetrating radar teams, and you follow the clues to the things that you see in those visions, and then you end up finding stuff, and that's where it gets weird.
You mentioned there also the gateway process, and you sent me the gateway process several years ago, the whole thing, and said, here, this is the process I use, and I wasn't ready then, but I've been meditating since then, and I really feel like I want to try it. So, do you recommend people should try it? I've heard kind of mixed reviews on it. What would you say about the gateway process? I guess can you explain it for people that haven't heard of it?
Yeah, so the gateway process is basically just a system of guided meditations that were developed by a guy named Bob Monroe, and he developed the Monroe Institute. But the Monroe Institute ended up combining with the Stanford Research Institute's remote viewing program, and they started the entire psychic spy program for the government, for the Army and the CIA.
And that's Hal Puthoff, right? Was he involved at that point as well? Or
yeah, definitely.
okay.
So Hal Puthoff and Bob
Russell
Monroe
Targ,
and these guys, Russell Targ. So there was all these documents of the early days of remote viewing when Project Stargate and Project Grill Flame kicked off and became real psychic spy programs for the government. And in these documents, they refer to this Mr. X all the time, like a redacted name that was always involved there, who actually handpicked a lot of the first members of the team and all of that. And that Mr. X was Bob Monroe, for sure, from the Monroe Institute. And when you look at like Psychic Spy 001, literally like the first official Army psychic spy was Joe McMoneagle. And so he was doing remote viewing at Stanford for Hal Puthoff and those guys in all of his books. When you talk to him in podcasts now, he works today as a teacher and an instructor at the Monroe Institute. So they were all combined and doing the same thing. But the gateway process is basically the system of meditation that was developed in the initial days of that program, that was the guided meditation system basically to do this contact protocol. And it combines what they call binaural frequency tones. So you put headphones on your head, like over the ear headphones, and it plays a frequency tone so that in one ear you hear one frequency, and in the other ear you hear a slightly different tone. So they're very close but slightly different. And your brain wants to sort that out. So as you hear the sound in your right ear, the left hemisphere of your brain tries to equalize that out with what it's hearing in the other ear, because if they're just slightly off, your brain wants to make it match. So what happens is it forces the different hemispheres of your brain through those frequencies to get in synchronization or get into harmony, sort of. Or normally you have the synaptic cleft and there's like a divide between the left and right hemispheres. This music and the sound of the ocean is supposed to open that up. So while the subconscious audio tones are opening up your mind through these frequencies, there's a guided meditation that goes along that basically helps you sort out your emotional feelings and your problems and build up your chakra energy, basically. And it's all through imaginary metaphors, like you visualize that you go up to an imaginary box, you put all your problems inside the box and you close the lid, and then the universe like solves all your problems for you. So it's like a spiritual tool that it teaches you how to deal with your problems, like in meditation. And as you go through the gateway protocol, by the time you get up to like level 23 to 25, you're literally going out of body, where you're going through all of the steps to detach your consciousness from your physical body and explore the astral plane, essentially, or to go to different places. And when you get up into the level 20s, they're literally called like contacting with non-human intelligences, like how you go through the steps and go through the doorways or go through the gateway in order to enter the psychic realm where non-human intelligences are also doing the same thing. And when you go into that realm, if you know what you're doing and you practice it enough, then you go through the gateway meditation or protocol, and you come back with information. And I really think that's what Jacob Barber and a lot of these guys on the team that are psionic assets are doing a version of that. Similar to Stephen Greer's like CE5 meditation, it's a visualization process where you see yourself and where you are on the earth, and you project that out into the universe like a bird call or whatever. So there's different versions of it, but they're all actually just like guided meditation systems that are effective and that were designed and developed by people that worked at the government because they were effective. And they know that because they had people participating in the program with the early versions of the MUPAS system. They had Geiger counters and magnetometers and things like that. They did experiments where they would do the gateway meditation with like a remote viewer called Ingo Swan. And he would do the out of body thing where he would go to like level 20, go out of body. And then he was able to like move the sensor and the needle with his mind on a vacuum sealed, like government controlled magnetometer system. And right when he was doing the meditation, he could move the needle, which was like, you're not supposed to do that, be able to do that with your mind. You can't even do it with a machine. If you walk in the room and bang on it, you can't move the needle. But somehow Ingo Swan was able to affect the sensor just by thinking about it. Right. And so that's why they were like, this is real. Like we can do things like a Jedi, like in Star Wars, like move things with our mind. Like we have to weaponize this. And so it became like a psychic spy program for the government. But the evidence of it and the program and the system and how it works, the early versions of that and the cassette tapes, a lot of those are available. And so that's what I use is a version of that. Like I don't actually put the tapes on. I don't like actually listen to it that much. Maybe once or twice a month, I'll do it for real. But most of the time, my own kind of version of that I've developed that's effective, I use all the time and every day. And especially, when I go like to Skinwalker Ranch or I go to ancient locations, I'm constantly doing that. Like even when we were in Norway, you're asking me, when do you want to start? Do you want to do a meditation? I'm like, dude, I've been doing it since before I even got on the plane. Before I even got on the plane to go to Norway, I'm connecting telepathically with the phenomena. Like I'm coming, like you're going to show up, right? We're going to film together. And it's like this whole conversation with the UAP before I even get on the plane to go there. Like, because all the rules of physics are off, like time and space and distance, the fact if they're in the future or the past, none of that matters. Like if you're really doing the protocol right, you're connected to the hub, the eternal hub, that's outside of space-time. So like even when we went to Norway, the whole time that I'm there, the whole time we're out and when we're in conversation with each other and everything, there's a part of me in the back of my mind that is in that place, that's like in this spiritual realm or connected in this subconscious dimension, like an antenna. And so I think we always are, all of us, even like right now, but most of us just don't pay attention to what you're tuned into.
So through all your experiences, through decades now, several decades of interacting with the phenomenon and investigating, what do you think it means to be human? What is the point of the phenomenon? Why are we here? What have you learned so far?
I don't know. I think the one thing that really still has me puzzled, like when I wonder about it, is I'm like, it's really amazing to be figuring all this stuff out and to be exploring it like an explorer of consciousness and reality, like really trying to figure it out like Indiana Jones or whatever. But like there's this part of it that's like, I don't know why do we come into this life with total amnesia. It seems like if we're actually these telepathic, psychic, quantum, eternal beings that are on this evolutionary path to become enlightened or to transcend, why do we kickstart this physical dimension with complete blindness? Like we have no memory of where we came from, what we're doing here, where we're going. A lot of us are born into certain religions and we never get even an idea of who we are. We're just like born and raised into these cultures and systems and societies where we're completely blind. And I think that's why you get kind of this side of the conspiracy where people wonder if we're in like a matrix or some kind of a psychic prison, or we're in sort of like a zoo where we're being utilized like a resource and we're kept blind and we're kept in amnesia. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like if you wake up and realize that you're born on the Gaza Strip, or you're born in some prison system, or born in a human trafficking system, you never, I guess our reality is we can't choose the cards that we're dealt when we enter this dimension or whatever. But we can wake up and we can realize what we are and who we are, and that this physical reality that we're in, even if it is a prison, is just made of frequency. It's just made of energy, and the walls of the prison are not actually there. They're an illusion of consciousness and reality that we're interfaced into. And to me, that's the key of getting out of that amnesia and the key to waking up and escaping that prison. And I don't know that it's necessarily a prison that we've been put in, but it is like a cocoon that we're coming out of somehow. Or I don't know why we're here, but I think that discovering these things, we realize that getting up and doing what we're doing day to day, like our physical life of trying to pay our bills, feed our families, and just put on our shoes and socks and go to work every day, isn't what we are. That's like a physical function that our bodies go through in this dimension of reality. But while that is going on simultaneously, there's an entire non-physical reality that's existing at the same time, that's not following the same rules as physics. So we have physics that explains physical reality perfectly fine, but it does not explain non-physical, non-physics reality, which is the entire psychic and consciousness realm. And I think as we realize that our entire reality actually works based on the principles of that consciousness realm, and the physics is an after effect or a tool to understand that, I think we'll realize that we've actually got it all backwards. And this physical reality is just like a shoe that we're putting on to get around. But the actual reality that we're in is this matrix of information and non-physical understanding that extends through all time and through all space. And I don't know where we're going or how we're supposed to get there. It seems like, by the time we start to figure things out, our physical body dies, and then we'll see, like maybe we just merge into that source and then it will all make sense. But yeah, for some reason, it's still a real mystery to me. I don't know. I don't really know why we have amnesia, but I'm really fascinated with exploring it. I know, coming out of organized religion and being raised in the Mormon church my whole life, it's been a huge puzzle for me to get out of religion and then have to try and figure out what's really going on, from abduction experiences, spiritual experiences, paranormal encounters, and this psychic phenomena. It's all being validated by different Green Berets and Delta Force operators and government scientists and officials all coming forward saying that it's true. And so I'm just trying to figure that all out, like an explorer of it all right now, just like an adventurer trying to go into a new land. We have this new realm of science and consciousness and who we are as humans that I think we're just barely scratching the surface of right now. We're still coming out of trying to figure out whether or not we came from great apes and evolved from that, or how that works. And now we're talking like quantum entanglement and frequency, and how we're manifest out of that frequency, and how consciousness is the actual substrate of reality. And that's just a totally different conversation that I think is new for humans now.
Yeah, it reminds me of Dean Radin's argument. is what he's saying is our current materialist paradigm is basically, you have physics at the bottom of the pyramid, and then it goes to chemistry, and then biology, right? And then it gets to um, humanity and consciousness, right? So that's the pyramid. The problem is when we look, we can't find consciousness up there. It doesn't make any sense. So what he said actually, what does make sense is that you put consciousness now at the base of the pyramid. So you have consciousness is the base, and then out of that comes physics, chemistry, biology, and what we see. But the base is consciousness. That's his argument again after 40 years of looking into this stuff. Um, yeah, the final question I had for you is Jake Barber and many others, if you look at near-death experiences, they mention this overwhelming love, like this intense love experience. And I've talked to other people, journalists behind the scenes who had their own close encounters, etc. They said the same thing, intense love. And Jake Barber said it's all about love, or he felt this amazing love when he actually interfaced with it and sadness. Have you experienced that? Do you think love is a main part of this?
Definitely. There's something about when you have like a close experience, like when you are really in the node and you're really meditating and you really have an experience like that of contact, where it taps into levels of yourself. Like I would imagine that as Jacob Barber's flying that helicopter and he's explaining that experience, that he mentions his mother, this feeling of being motherly love. The phenomena has a way of knowing you, of tapping in and like seeing through you in a way to where like it would be very common for me, like when I'm in the cave in Nevada with you guys and I'm just doing a meditation experience to see what's there, if there's any message in the cave or any other consciousness there. And in that instance, it would be very common for me to suddenly feel like my father's there, like my father who died 10 years ago. Suddenly I sense the presence of my father, and there would be like flashes of actual smells. Like I instantly would be teleported to this memory of when I'm a child and my father, he's smoking his Marlboro cigarettes, and it's like I'm a child looking up and I see the smoke coming off the tip of the cigarette and I can smell it like I'm there. And he's like teaching me how to hammer a nail in the wood. And I'm in the cave in Nevada, like with my friends, and we're filming YouTube video. But at the same time, you connect with the phenomena, and as it's trying to understand you and know who you are, it's tapping its consciousness into the core of who you are. And so you're having these memories and visions of like my father when I was a child, and I have a memory of when I was by the lake with my dog, or just these things will come up. And this overwhelming feeling of the phenomena connecting with you evokes a sense of wonder and love and awe. I've had, in fact, 3 years ago, I recorded a whole audio meditation and put it on my Patreon page, and it's called The Cosmic Egg. And it's literally a meditation where you go through a gateway protocol, you go through a portal, and then you meet one of these eggs, like Jacob Barber talks about, and you communicate with the consciousness inside the egg. And then you actually go into the egg and you become the entity in the egg, and you realize what the inside of the egg is and who you are. And you go on like this whole cosmic journey. And the egg is like a UFO that you fly in. And that's like all in the meditation that I recorded and did like 3.5 years ago or something. But those experiences and the meditation that I made and recorded for my Patreon page all come from personal experiences. So these are experiences that I've had where that I can't make sense of at the time, but I'll have like a whole vision where I feel like I see this cosmic egg in some spiritual dimension that doesn't make sense. And then I go and meet the entity inside and become that entity and understand it, like merge together with it, and it understands me. And that entire experience is very deeply spiritual and very deeply personal, like connects to the fabric of who I am and what matters to me, and my father passing away, and there's all these powerful symbols in that vision of seeing into yourself as you're exploring the universe, and different things that are layered into that that are so hard to explain. So when Jacob Barber talks about that being like a love, I totally get what he's talking about. It's like within 1 to 2 seconds, contact with the phenomena can touch you in ways where it will evoke memories and thoughts and connects things with you, where suddenly you're like, oh, and you understand yourself in a way that you never would have before. And it's completely unexpected, because what you're doing in that meditation at the time isn't even related to that. Like I might be up on a mountain somewhere up in Vernal looking for petroglyphs, and suddenly I'm having this deep experience with my grandpa who died 20 years ago. Like I'm at a train station and he's talking to me, and we're really, really there, and it's very, very personal sometimes. So I think when it talks about that love and that connection between all of it, I think that's like an underlying factor. I think it's impossible to interact with the phenomena at any kind of level of consciousness without it tapping into that way. And that's either going to freak you out and you're going to be afraid of it, or it's going to touch you and you're going to feel that love, that kind of like motherly curiosity and kindness. But to me, it's always been a positive thing. And even when it's been a little bit scary and it's been tough, like and things have gone wrong in my life, I've been able to do the meditations and eventually have the experiences where I understand those moments too, where I'm like, now I get why I went through that. Now I understand. And so even though while it might seem scary in the moment, like there's just some weird shadow figure in the corner of your room, and then you have this nightmare, as you explore that puzzle to try and figure it out, you come out a different person and understand why you went through it. So yeah, it always ends up being like a version of love or tough love in some way.
It seems, I think, honestly terrifying for a lot of people, just that level of vulnerability. If you think about it, introspection, if telepathy is real, then do I really have any private thoughts? What am I actually made of? Like you mentioned there, this whole psionic assets, what I've seen is just huge, um, terrible, really, reception in the UFO community. It seems like a large part of the community or a large part of the populace just immediately discounts it, like it can't be true. This is obviously a lie. He's a fraud, etc. Do you think it comes from that vulnerability, or is it just, we've been told for so many decades that this can't be possible? Where do you think that big out kicking comes from the local community? People probably, if they made it this far in the video, I'm impressed actually. If they are definite skeptics, I guess what would you say to them? What's that initial reaction of denial? Why is that
The,
coming?
the, the system was designed that way, honestly. And I think that's the way that they keep it secret. The parts of it that do come out, and when it does get leaked out and validated, it's designed to receive ridicule, and it's already been built up to be like men who stares at goats.
Yeah.
They pick like preemptively 15 years before this stuff comes out, they'll come out with a movie that makes fun of the whole story. So you can't even bring up the topic of remote viewing without people saying, oh, it's like Men Who Stares at Goats in that comedy George Clooney movie. Like, yeah, that was based on a real government program that's still going on. And you have to realize, like we've done, like you can't just take the surface cover story as an answer when they say,
Yeah.
oh, we did the remote viewing program, we did it for like 8 years, and then according to the official CIA records, they didn't find it effective enough, so they just cut the funding. But when you actually are not satisfied with that generic answer and response, and you do like what we've done, and you go to the places where these guys were, and you realize, wait a second, when this program was supposed to be canceled, like 12 of these guys were actually all together for 10 years in Nevada at a site with like millions of dollars of funding and doing something. What were they doing? Why were they there? And you go there and you're like, they were looking for a UFO that was supposed to be hiding underground. Hal Puthoff is there, the founder of the remote viewing program. And they've got like 10 different people, and each of them got 10 to $20 million of funding. And these guys are literally the UFO research team for the government. And we're told on the surface as the public that those programs were ineffective, that they just didn't produce any results and it didn't work. Well, how convenient, you know. The last thing that these programs want, the last thing the NSA and the CIA want, is for half the population of the United States to learn remote viewing and become psychic spies. Because then suddenly, how are you going to hide anything at Area 51? How are you going to hide where the missing money went from the Pentagon when you've got gifted, clairvoyant, telepathic people that can literally read the files in a locked filing cabinet in a closed room in a vault somewhere, and they can read it with their mind through telepathy from their living room at home? That's the last thing political leaders and military officials want. You know, they don't want us having those abilities, you know. And the truth is that people who get into remote viewing, unless they get weaponized to do those jobs and to do those things, you're really not interested in that. Like, the last thing that I want to do as a remote viewer is spy on my neighbor. Like, that seems like the most boring thing ever. Like, the first thing that you want to do when you're remote viewing is like talk to dead people or talk to aliens and find out the mysteries and things like that, you know. But yeah, I think that the ridicule that it gets is just wait and see. Like, to me, it's been nothing but validating. You and I and Chris Bartell and Brent Stone were up in that cave in Nevada over 5 years ago. And all of that we were doing was complete nonsense back then. No one would have ever understood it. Even when you were there, you were like, this is goofy. I don't know if this is real or not. And now, fast forward, and you realize that whole time we were doing that, Jake
Now it's all
Barber,
come out. The secret
Delta Force
team that we had no clue about comes out and says that they're using this. Like, that's literally what they're using. I mean, it's unbelievable.
We were just our own little ragtag team that went together like on a field trip to Nevada, and we literally were doing the same thing that the official Green Beret Delta Force UFO crash recovery guys were doing. And we're all speculating, is this real or is this not? And at the same time, just across the exact same state as us in the Sierra Nevadas, Jake Barber's out on his helicopter picking up eggs. Like, think about that, man. So I don't care. These naysayers, these guys on Twitter and stuff, they weren't up there in the cave with us. They didn't go.
Oh.
They didn't go to Magic Mesa and sit at the Shaman seat. They haven't done it. They haven't gone to the field. They haven't sat in the rocks. They haven't sat in the cave and connected with this phenomena. They definitely haven't been in the helicopter with one attached. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They haven't sat on the meadow, in the lower meadow, on top of a buried UFO underground and felt it and tried to communicate with it. They've never done that. So of course they're going to sit at home and laugh at it like a joke because they've fallen for the propaganda. They fell for the cover story. They got duped by the cover story and it was effective on them, you know. But for people like us or you know, that have the phenomena, it doesn't follow those rules. Like, it might choose you since you were a child, you know, and then what are you going to do about it? It doesn't matter what the people on Twitter are saying. I know the life I've had, you know, they can say whatever they want. I know better. And so it's just a matter of time. These special forces operators and these whistleblowers coming forth, and now with Jake Barber and his whole team, there's going to be more, because I guarantee you his squad of guys weren't the only ones. There's probably several dozen teams like that running around all over the world, you know. So it's just a matter of time. More footage is going to come out, more whistleblower testimonies, and that's going to get really messy. But for those of us that have been exploring this strange phenomena for a long time, you see its traces everywhere, and you realize this has always been going on. It's been going on since, like we were talking about, ancient Egypt. From the beginning of time. You you can't look into an ancient culture. As soon as they started learning how to write or carve petroglyphs or hieroglyphs or anything, they tell the same story everywhere. It's the same story. It doesn't matter if you go to Australia, ancient Egypt, Mesoamerica, same story, different language.
That's amazing, Carl, man. I love our discussions. It's so much fun. And thanks for being a friend. It's been one of the highlights really of doing this crazy job is getting to know you and going on these trips with you. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, I ask everyone go check out Carl's channel. Puts out amazing content. Like I said, his last video, watched the whole thing straight through. Great stuff. He's got more stuff coming down the pipeline. So we're, crazy underground radars, etc., high tech equipment. Actually, he'll sign it and send it to you. So really exciting. Yeah, and please like this video. Hit the like button. It helps me and Carl. Share it and go check out Carl's channel as well. And then check out our Patrons. That's how it supports us, right? We're not making millions of dollars in this gig. You guys probably be surprised. And so really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Anything you want to say, Carl?
No, I just think I'm excited. I think we're going to have a lot of stuff to do. I'm supposed to go work with Chris Bledsoe this year and next year.
Cool. Because he said he said the age of Aquarius, right, is going to come when the Regulus star is in the gaze of the Sphinx. I think, have you heard that as well? I heard spring of 2026.
Supposed to be over Easter 2026. Yeah, I'm supposed to be with him when that happens. I'm not sure whether. Yeah, I'm supposed to go with Chris when all that's going down. I'm not sure where we're going to go or what we're doing, but I'm super curious, and we're going to find out. We got that going on, and maybe
you'll finally go to Egypt. I couldn't get you to go on the last trip to Egypt, but maybe you'll go with Bledsoe.
Maybe a Peru trip or Bledsoe or something. Yeah, but and also supposed to go back to Norway, so lots of cool stuff. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Just check out the stuff. Follow LehtoFiles, and I got to have you come over onto my channel. We'll do a swap. I need to interview you and all of your stories on this journey. So that will be fun too.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Carl. All right, we're seeing if we can see the actual beam splitting across a hair. More smoke. I think the laser's too wide. Whoa, look how much smoke. How do you turn it up? Oh no. Yeah, there's no we're gonna die. Well, we might. I don't know if this is healthy, everybody.
Yeah, that's like an 80s music video.
Can't see any splitting. I think the beam's too long, too wide. It's not cutting in. Here we go. We got this set up in the saloon through the guitar. It's the laser off the stage through the guitar string, which should be causing interference patterns. We should be able to see the lines of the laser. So you see it splitting, dude.
Look at that. It looks like multiple fiber optic lines instead of a single. So it reveals the wave.
Yeah, we can see the wave now.
See the waveform.
Yeah. It puts out. It looks like the JWST, man. It looks like James Webb Space Telescope, like star pattern.
Oh, it totally does like that.
Right?
Wow. Awesome, dude. Yeah. That was 59 seconds.
We go like a JWST star pattern from this. In the saloon of the Minor Diner up here at Mount Wilson, you can see the laser beams. Look at that. Like fiber optic cables. So this is the interference pattern from a guitar string. So you go up here, there's the smoke machine. In the saloon, there's Jeff. Smoke machine. You can see the lines split here at the guitar. There's a guitar string. Oh, see the laser. Haha, I hit it.